I think the plan is to look at both at the urban renewal document, at the city's audited financial statements, and then the city also does a federal audit called the single audit each year if you spend more than $750,000. And it seems like kind of from here on out, I'd be surprised if we ever had a year when we didn't have that much anymore. So we've got that federal audit. So she'll go over those documents, take questions from you all, and I guess that's kind of my update. We don't get printed copies of the audit anymore. We just use the PDFs. So they've been posted on the website since they were issued. So they've been on the website for the last 3 months and change. So if you guys want to follow along with our auditor, you probably would want to have those documents up. And she'll also have them and show us around. So Tanya Moffett is the partner that we work with at Marina and Company, who has been doing our audit now for a number of years. I think we're in year 8 or so, and we've got 2 more in the contract with them. So any questions at this stage? We'll just jump right in. Yeah? Okay, great. I don't have the Zoom up, so I don't know if anyone else is on Zoom, but I guess it's just Tanya.
Honorable Mayor and City Council, I'm Tanya Moffett, and as Jennifer stated, I am a partner with Marina and Company, and I am here to present the June 30, 2022 city's annual comprehensive financial report, as well as the single audit and then the urban renewal agency. So I'm going to start off with the annual comprehensive financial report. Please feel free to stop me at any time if you have a question about it, something that I say or something that we're looking at. We issued our financial statements opinion on December 29th, 2022, and we had what's called an unmodified or a clean opinion. That's the highest level of financial statement opinion that we are allowed to give on a financial statement. Our opinion of the financial statements are limited to the basic financial statements, the supplementary information. We applied limited procedures to the schedule of proportionate share of net position of liability. It's the schedule of contributions for pensions and the schedule of proportionate share for OPEB. The introductory and statistical sections of the report have not been audited by us, and accordingly, we do not express an opinion on that information. One thing I would like to note is that the city's financial statements are what are called an annual comprehensive financial report. This is going above and beyond what is required by the Government Accounting Standards Board. So there's a minimum level of financial statement information that has to be in a GAAP-based financial statement. And the city is choosing to go above and beyond and apply for this award program, which is put on by the Government Finance Officers Association. So the city submits the financial statements to independent reviewers. They go through and make sure that the financial statements are held to this really high level of financial statement rigor. So there's some pieces in the financial statement that are not in a traditional financial statement, including the transmittal letter, as well as the statistical section, which the statistical section has 10 years worth of historical information. So it's actually one of my favorite parts of the financial statement. And that takes a lot of time and effort of city staff to put that together. The city received the award for the June 30, 2021 audited financial statements, and we anticipate that they will also receive it for the June 30, 2022 financial statements as well. So I'm going to go through the financial statements just a little bit. Like I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'm going to try to share my screen. I'm hoping you all can see the annual comprehensive financial statement.
Yeah, it's there. Thanks.
Okay, and hopefully it's big enough. So make it a little bit smaller there. So our opinion is on page 13 of the financial statement, and that explains what I just went over, what we are opining on and what we aren't. It's all standard information. There is also one accounting change this year. So the Government Accounting Standard Board sets what standards that the city has to follow. And this year there's a new GASB, Statement 87, which is leases. And so if you are comparing the June 30, 2022 financial statements to the June 30, 2021 financial statements, they're not going to be exactly apples to apples. And that is because of this new accounting pronouncement for leases. So there's some additional information that is in there. One of my favorite parts of the financial statements is actually the management discussion and analysis. And we read this information. It is not audited by us, but we make sure it agrees to the information in the financial statements. The management discussion and analysis is actually one of my favorite places in the comprehensive annual financial report. The reason for this, as you can see here, hopefully, is there's financial highlights. What's changed from last year? What are those things that are different? Where is the city at? There's also a high-level explanation of what type of what the different information is in the financial statements, as well as summary information right here. This is the high-level information, and it compares the prior year and the current year together, and then whatever those changes are. And then it also talks about why there's those changes at that high level. So that's why I really like the management discussion and analysis, is because it has that really high snapshot of where the city is at, where they were last year, and what information and why those changes are there. We also, for the audited financial statements, the Oregon State Legislature has some very specific things that they ask Oregon municipal auditors to look at for compliance. This is not just financially based information. So they have Oregon municipal auditors look at some things, and here's a list of them here. Hopefully you can see this. So deposits of public funds in financial institutions. Some of you may be aware of some bank issues that are happening and going on throughout the United States right now. One of the things that we look at is we make sure that those funds are collateralized by FDIC, or that they're in some sort of collateralization program that the state puts on, or below that level, to make sure that the public funds are not at risk for bank collapse and bank failure. We look at indebtedness, so how much debt is out there, making sure that you're in compliance with those things, as well as Oregon budget law. Has the city followed all of the public postings to make sure that the public is aware of the budget committee meetings, things like that? Also making sure that the city is in compliance and not overexpending what they're legally allowed to spend based off of those the budget that was adopted prior to year end. Insurance and fidelity bonds, programs funded from outside sources, highway and revenue funds, that's the state gas tax, authorization and investment in surplus funds, and public purchasing, which is ORS 279. So when the city goes and does let's say a road project, that it's been published in the newspaper and everybody has an equal opportunity to bid on those projects, as well as we look at to make sure that the most qualified applicant was selected during the proposal process, as well as then whoever is winning that contract, to make sure that the city is included as one of the insurees on the insurance. We don't look at all of them, but we do look at it at a sample basis. And I'm happy to report that we had no findings for the city or the urban renewal for minimum standards. They would be listed right here if there was any compliance issues, and we did not see any there for the city. We had full access to everything that we looked at when we were looking at the city's information. There were no restrictions or difficulties. There are some accounting estimates in the financial statements that include things like depreciation, compensated absences payable, net pension liability, and other post-employment benefits liabilities. The net pension liability, as well as the post-employment benefits liability, which we can see on page 32 of the financial statements, 46 of the PDF. The pension liability, I'm going to find it here, just give me 1 second. Net pension liability, as well as the other post-employment benefits liability, are both calculated by an actuary. So the city is not calculating those estimates themselves. Those are coming from an actuary who has very specific rules on how they calculate that and what information that they use for that. The net pension liability by far is the largest estimate on the city's financial statements. As you can see here, for the city, it's $20 million. One thing that I like to note is that as long as the city is making their required contributions, then theoretically they will be paying off that liability in the future. So I don't get concerned unless the city is not making those annual required contributions. The city did not enter into any transactions that lacked authoritative guidance, so there was nothing that was unusual in the financial statements. There were no material misstatements noted. In some cases, management may decide to consult with other accountants about accounting and auditing matters or obtain a second opinion, and there were no such consultations that we are aware of. Does anybody have any questions on the city's financial statements before I go into the single audit as well as the urban renewal agency?
Do any counselors in the gallery have any questions? Do any counselors on Zoom have any questions? Okay, I'm ready to move on. Thank you.
Okay. So when the city receives and spends over $750,000 of federal awards, they are required to do what's called a single audit. The single audit is something that the federal government has said, okay, when you spend over $750,000, we want to make sure that you're spending those funds according to what the grant agreements say or loan documents if they're loaned funds. So like Jennifer stated, the city has had a single audit, it seems like every single year, and probably for the foreseeable future. That's a good thing. That means that you're receiving federal funds and have the ability to use those in your community. So I'm going to share the single audit now. Here's the single audit for June 30, 2022. For the single audit, we had a clean opinion and we didn't have any compliance findings on it as well. One thing to note is that the city spent for the year, so it's a fiscal year, so starting July 1st, 2021 through June 30, 2022, the city spent $2,223,470 of federal funds. And when we went in and did our single audit, we focused on what's called a major program. So there's this calculation that auditors do to figure out what is the highest risk, where is the area that we need to focus our compliance testing on. And so that was around the Federal Aviation Administration grants. And so we tested that particular program and we had no findings that we identified. One thing to also note is that the city is called right here at the bottom of page 8. I'm going to blow it up a little bit. Right here is a comment that says, does the auditee qualify as a low risk auditee? And so you can see here it's checked yes, or if you can't, I'm telling you it's checked yes. So the city of McMinnville qualifies as a low risk auditee. That means that they haven't had any findings in the previous 2 fiscal years. And there's some other calculations and things that go into that as well. So that also helps the city when federal granting agencies are looking at you to determine whether or not to give you federal funding, as you are listed as a low risk auditee. And then as you can see here on page 9, there were no financial statement findings, no federal award findings and question costs, and there were none in the prior fiscal year that we needed to report on either. Does anybody have any questions on the single audit, what it is, or what we look at, anything like that?
It does not appear so. Any counselors on Zoom have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. We're ready to move forward.
Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the McMinnville Urban Renewal Agency. And again, this is for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2022. For the Urban Renewal Agency, we also delivered the reports on December 29th, 2022, and we had an unmodified or clean opinion, which is the highest level of financial statement opinion that we can give on financial statements. One thing to note about the Urban Renewal Agency is that the Urban Renewal Agency is legally a separate entity from the City of McMinnville, but it's considered a blended component unit, which means that the information from McMinnville Urban Renewal Agency is also included in the city's financial statement information, but they have this standalone financial statement. So we're going to go through it really quickly. So here is the McMinnville Urban Renewal Agency, and on page 1 is where our audit report is at. And our opinion is for the basic financial statements. We applied limited procedures on the management discussion and analysis. Again, like I said before, the management discussion and analysis, which starts on page 4. This is my favorite part of the Urban Renewal Agency's financial statements as well. Because it has that financial statement highlights as well as the comparative information, like with the prior year and the current year information in here. We also did a minimum standards report, which again, what I stated before is that the Oregon State Legislature has those specific items that they want us to look at. There's not quite as many for the Urban Renewal Agency, just because, for example, the Urban Renewal Agency does not receive highway funds. So it's listed here, but it also states that that's not something that's applicable to the Urban Renewal Agency. And I'm happy to report that we had no findings of non-compliance for the Oregon minimum standards for the Urban Renewal Agency as well. Does anybody have any questions on the Urban Renewal Agency or any of the financial statements?
Any counselors on Zoom have any questions?
No questions, thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. No questions at this time.
Well, I'd like to thank the City of McMinnville's team, specifically the finance department under Jennifer's leadership. It makes the audit very smooth when we go out and we have all of the information available to us. And we also met with the audit committee last Thursday on March 9th, and we're able to walk through in more depth into the numbers as well. So I'd like to thank all of the members of the audit committee as well for having great questions and representing you well. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And of course, our hats off, as always, to our stellar department heads that do an amazing job of producing these results where we get these clean results year after year. I think it probably does tremendous good for the council as a whole to be able to do its job and deliverables, knowing that we're so well prepared. So thank you so much, and thank you to everyone in your department and to our audit committee. Thank you very much. We appreciate your service. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Great evening.
The work session is adjourned at 6:22 p.m. city every 2 months. And the COG decides.
Oh, the COG decides. out of that gas tax, a certain percentage of those taxes didn't go to the state.
Anybody have a question?
Out of that sharing that the city financing, fundamentally, and then you guys figured out some way to get reimbursed. Apparently you're losing a benefit that you've wrangled for the last, I don't know how many years. I just, that deal, I don't know, that deal is not that deal anyway. It's the issue. And that's why you've been talking about doing independent. Actually, I'd just like to be careful. Right? It was never part of the original deal. And I just want my name right. How will you go back to middle, initial. It's about D.
Just the letter D.
As you did in every yearbook. Adam D. Garvin. David? Daniel. Douglas.
Happening that 100% thing that got started. Basically, you're using sugar highway dollars. You pay that way. And you've been doing that for a while. And that's been beneficial. Don't get me wrong. I can see that.
Yeah.
State may have emergency.
You gonna get some food?
What they honor.
Oh, you got 3?
Look at me.
Reduced.
Yeah, I think it had to be back. It had to be back there by December 28th. And you just barely got it done.
I'll ask councilors to find their seats. It's 7 p.m. I'd like to start.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
We have one more counselor here. Well, it is 7 p.m., and so I will call the McMinnville City Council regular meeting of March 14th, 2023 to order, and ask our city recorder, Claudia Cisneros, to do a roll call, please.
Councillor Geary.
Good evening.
Councillor Minke. Present. Councillor Chenoweth.
Present.
Councillor Payne.
Present.
Councillor Peralta.
Present.
Council President Garvin.
Present.
And Mayor Drabkin.
Here, thank you very much. And I would like to ask Councillor Kelly Menke to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for being here this evening. We have a rather quick meeting, theoretically, and we will start by taking comments from community members. Any interested audience members are invited to provide comments, and any comment provided that requires some type of follow-up will be assigned to a staff member. Anyone may speak on any topic other than a matter in litigation, a quasi-judicial land use matter, or a matter scheduled for public hearing at some future date. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person for a total of 30 minutes. If you're on Zoom and you wish to speak, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom, and once your turn is up, we will announce your name and unmute your mic. You may also send a chat directly to our city recorder, Claudia Cisneros, and she will announce you. Are there any public comments?
Yes. First, we'll start with Diane Riggs. Diana, sorry.
Nice to see you. Welcome.
My first public comment. So excited. My name is Diana Riggs. I own a business called Mac Market at 11th Way and Alpine Avenue in the urban renewal area called the Greenery District. We proudly renovated a dilapidated warehouse and turned it into a burgeoning eating, drinking, and community gathering place that progresses the city's goals of creating a live, work, play neighborhood along Alpine Avenue. A lot of this you know. I know we're at the beginning of a long-term plan to transition this neighborhood, and resources are needed elsewhere at the moment. But I just want to encourage everyone to keep the dream alive of what this area can become, and to keep considering it when you are making decisions for the city. For example, if the Parks Department is looking for a space for a new park, and I hear there are feelers being put out about EV charging stations, and the lack of parking on Alpine is problematic, could the city acquire the lots between Alpine and Lafayette and 11th Way and 12th to turn the block into a park with a parking lot and EV charging stations? I know this is oversimplified and probably not how it works, but it's how my mind works, which frankly is why Mac Market exists. I believe the Greenery District is and will be a wonderful neighborhood for our community, and I encourage you to continue to invest your energy into its possibilities. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have Mark Risch.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for joining us again.
Good evening, Council. Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening.
This shouldn't take too long, but my concerns to this council is something that citizens across the United States are now having to deal with and figure out how they're going to move forward. I want to start out by saying that call this my city and who I am. I was up here 6 years ago to try and help the homeless solution, and was trying to move for the city to actually care enough to give up 2 properties to have a camp built, 2 camps, one for family and one for those that do drugs and alcohol, so they ain't sitting on 3rd Street. But I find that the council doesn't really go for what we out here say or think or want. I was told by 2 mayors previous that Governor Brown had assigned a program to study and allow the feasibility of 2 homeless encampments upon each city. This city chose not to go down that way, and I think his name's Commissioner Hanson. I'm not sure. He's now at the county. But anyways, I said some few choice things, and I'm banned out of Blue Moon, and I really don't care to hang out with those type of people anyways. Thank you very much for building another adult facility out at the Greenery. That's good. About my history, I'm from Willamina. I boxed in the Willamina BFW. I have over 110 boxing matches, golden gloves, silver gloves, and I'm also one pro fight where I shattered my hand and ended that career living in this city in 1984. I want to start out by saying that when I quit high school when I was 16, I was a wrestler, boxer, and very good standard and able to move a wheelbarrow, dirt, and a shovel, and know how to put a tree in the ground. I got a job from the state one day, and I came down here and met a Mr. Squires, and I proceeded planting trees for about 4 hours down 3rd Street in front of Borisma's and the other businesses. And at the end of the day, 4 hours or so in, he says, well, here's a check. Don't bother coming back tomorrow because I thought you was going to be older. Now, disturbed me. 6 months later, I'm joining the Navy because, you know what? I'm younger. But the thing is that we're forced to make moves that we really don't want. Now, getting out of the Navy, I brought my family back up from California to start a family, to get a job and move forward and function as an Oregonian. And the 1987 Simpson-Mazzulli Act handed over dollars to our state Democrat Party, and I'm one of about 20,000 fathers who are told to leave the house or your family will not be fed. Look it up, 1987. The federal dollars that were made to carry me and low-income families and our families to keep together was taken away, and I was told to kick rocks. I'm back, and I'm a Navy fighter, and I'm not leaving, okay? Now, where I'm going to go from this point forward, this topic is a firestorm across the United States right now. I'm asking you.
You have about 1 moment, 1 minute
One
left.
moment, okay? Here we go.
Absolutely.
Adult entertainment and drag queen hours are for adults only. Alcohol shall not be served in front of the minors, and our minors should not be allowed to tuck dollar bills in fake women with panties and fake boobs and a wig, period. Okay? We need to have that as an ordinance. It is a lewd and lascivious act. It is an ordinance. It is an ordinance. It is arrestable by law.
Thank you for your comments, and thank you for your service. We appreciate it.
Excuse me.
Are there any additional public comment?
None that have signed up.
Is there anybody else in the gallery that would like to provide testimony this evening? Is there anybody on Zoom that would like to provide public comment this evening? I see one person on Zoom, Claudia. Sir, if you will please state your name and address for the record before making your comment, we appreciate it.
Hello?
Hi, go ahead.
Okay,
If you'll
great.
state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, Charles Gibbons, 1408 Northeast 10th. I want to chime in on Joe Dancer Park. I live in the neighborhood, and I spend a lot of time over there taking my dogs. Lately, obviously, they just opened the park, and it's filled back with RVs, and it's looking pretty bad over there. Walking through the woods that line the area along the river, I can probably point out 4 or 5 spots where fires have been started. So I think the park needs a lot of attention, and some of the activity needs to be corralled there. I have a feeling going into summer season that there's going to be a huge fire in that park, and it's going to burn all along the wood line. So I would like to see some of those things addressed immediately over there before we get into the dry season. And I saw 2 people over there on Friday in the RV cruise dumping human waste. One of them was right in one of the parking lots, a large multi-gallon container. And the other one was dumped down the little hill on the far side that goes into the little water preserve, the nature preserve over there. So we're seeing a lot of activity, and it's only been open a week or so. And I'd like to see those things addressed as soon as possible.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any additional people who would like to submit public comment on Zoom? One more time, if anybody on Zoom would like to submit public comment. Thank you. Thank you for submitting your comments this evening. We'll now go into reports from councilors on committee and board assignments. We'll start with Councilor Peralta.
No report this evening, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. And Councilor Payne.
Thank you, Mayor. Landscape review meets tomorrow, so there hasn't been a meeting since we were last here. And audit committee, as you know, met last, it was the 9th, and Kelly and I attended that, and you just got a preview of what that looked like, and it was very in-depth at 259 pages, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you, Councilor Menke.
I'm going to briefly report on Fox Ridge Road Survey and Community Design Workshop. We have coming up on March 21st, our Community Design Workshop, which is scheduled from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., the Tuesday, March 21st. The shop itself will be about 2 hours and will be followed by the Public Action Committee meeting and to discuss and kind of debrief afterward. So just so everyone knows, and if you're interested in the Fox Ridge area, please attend. And also you can find this on the city website.
Thank you very much. Councilor Chenoweth?
Excuse me, MEVLC met. We covered more of the Noble Grant, working through the process of signing the agreement with MISO that was going to be a 40/60 loan opportunity for underserved business owners in the community. Still working through that process, hoping to reach the end of it, and had a good discussion on potential new members. At this point, nothing to announce in that vein. And that was it.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Geary?
Thank you. DEIAC met, and we had a meeting to kick off the public engagement process for the Northeast Neighborhood Committee infrastructure feasibility study that's going on, and got a lot of information in a short amount of time, and then spent the rest of the time discussing work plan for the ARPA dollars allocated for furthering the city's mission and DEI-related efforts relative to the strategic plan. And to that end, realized we have more work to do and want to do it sooner than later, and so we've got an additional work session on the books for this Thursday. Public Safety Task Force, which I liaison while not an official public city committee. I'll report there was discussion around creation of a flyer. A flyer was created to help as a asset to business and building owners to discuss things like no trespass agreements and what and where to do and the importance of reporting. Then some question was about how the best to put in a system in place to deliver that to all businesses in the city and keep up on that routinely. And if there was a tool to accomplish such a thing, that would be great. And subcommittee reports, they had some reports from some subcommittees that had started meeting, and then the chief of police, Matt Scales, attended to answer a few questions that the committee had and provide some information, which was good. MURAC, also liaison, and I don't think they've had a meeting, and I don't think there's an upcoming meeting scheduled, so.
Thank you very much. Council President Garvin.
Thank you, Mayor. YCOM was supposed to meet today, but due to some illness within the YCOM board, we chose to postpone that till our April meeting. Airport Commission met on March 1st. Nothing too new and exciting to report there. We're just gearing up for that master planning phase in August, which will kick off. And Visit McMinnville meets tomorrow. And then Fire District, last week we got a final nod from the Board of Commissioners, and we were able to file for our ballot measure numbers. So 36-226 is a rule measure for dissolving the rural fire district, and we're going to want to advocate for people to vote yes on that. And then the ballot measure 36-227 is the ballot measure that forms that new district that all rural voters and all city voters vote on. And so we want a yes vote on that as well. And then in front of you tonight is a statement of support from the City Council, and it would be my hope to have you guys sign your JC VP2 forms tonight so we can get those turned in for a voter's pamphlet statement and a statement of support. I have all those on hand so we can do that after the meeting. I did just email out version 2 of that. Zach caught a typo that the Microsoft Word read scribbly did not catch for me on some name spelling. And then I reformatted the listed names to replicate alphabetical order of our last names like Claudia does roll call. So if there's any other edits, I'm happy to do that tonight before you guys all sign on. And Councilor Peralta, I'd be happy to meet up with you in person later on this week to get your signature. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Garvin.
Thank you very much. I had the pleasure of traveling to Washington, D.C. with McMinnville Water and Light General Manager John Dietz and other members of municipally owned water and electric utilities in the Pacific Northwest to talk to our Northwest federal delegation about how to ensure low power rates for us going forward. We had three main things that we were discussing. One was related to supply chain, so it was making sure that Congress and Senate understood the massive supply chain issues that we're currently facing. As an example, things related to like transformers for a single house used to have about a 12-week lead time, are now over 100 weeks. And we talked about some energy efficiency standards that are being suggested for transformers, which could have a large negative impact. There's an energy efficiency standard being presented that would make transformers about 2% more efficient, but requires the use of amorphous steel instead of granular steel, and there's only one plant that produces amorphous steel in the United States, and it's rather small, so it would force all of that production offshore, and the amorphous steel is also what is used in electric vehicles, so we would be not only needing a new offshore product in order to make supplies such as transformers, but then that supply is going to only be in greater demand as electrification continues. We also talked about the Columbia River Treaty, and we talked about deauthorizing hydropower on Willamette River dams, not eliminating those dams, but just deauthorizing the power use, because it costs more to create the power on the Willamette River dams than it generates it's for sale. So those dams take a loss. It was an interesting and wonderful trip, and I would love to share more about it with you all when we have more time. Also on water and light, currently the Link Dam is dewatered due to a damaged drain valve. And again, supply chain issues made it very difficult to get in and do a repair and a timely fix. So there was a state of emergency declared in order to get some fixes in. Permanent repairs, however, will not be able to be made until next year. The Water and Light Commission also awarded 2 timber sales for 2023. The 187 road is a 59-acre harvest of Doug fir, and the 303 road is a 65-acre harvest of Doug fir. And Water and Light also continues to engage with Public Power and BPA on 2028 contract development. Our current contract expires in 2028, and the goal is to have a new contract in place by 2026, and it would be a 20-year contract. The staff also continues to work with an architectural firm on development of a facilities plans for updates to the Water and Light main facility. An estimated completion of that plan is summer of 2023. Additionally, you'll all be hearing from, I assume from Claudia, but Claudia and Trina have been working with BDS to identify some dates for some joint commission and city council meetings. This will be a series of meetings where BDS first meets with one body and then the other, and then brings both bodies together. And this is a joint effort between the city and Water and Light, sharing in the cost of doing this work. And this is to help us come back and understand roles and responsibilities and make sure that our two bodies are working hand in hand as we go forward. And then lastly, I wanted to update you on the Navigation Center. I think there's some important information that the council should know that is kind of layered. So we, as you know, you've been seeing the progress on the Navigation Center come across your desk. You know, I think Councilor Chenoweth, I think you recused yourself from voting on Fackler Construction based on your previous relationship, but obviously we're engaged with the contractor. And actually, we are expecting final maximum bid in April, and we are ready to bring a contract to council in early May. However, our construction costs have been going up 1% a month over the last year, and as we all know, the construction market has just changed. So the $1.5 million that we received from the legislature last year no longer covers the cost of the project. And in fact, we are now short $1.3 million to complete that project. So obviously, we cannot bring a contract for you to sign or for you to approve for signing if we don't have the funds secured. We need to hit this construction window this summer. It's a 40-week project. We do have spending deadlines. This council has dedicated $500,000 to operations, and additionally, the city has been managing both the construction and the financial end of it. I have asked every single person in every single office higher than my own for money or a method to secure those funds. And additionally, I've been talking with Oregon Housing and Community Services if they can find additional funds. And that's especially important because YCAP, independently from the city, has secured a grant with Oregon Housing and Community Services for an additional $1.6 million, which will cover some pre-construction costs, will supply all the furnishings, and has operational costs wrapped into it as well. And that grant money also has a strong deadline. So we are urgently trying to secure $1.3 million in additional funds so that we actually can bring a contract forward that this council could hopefully approve, and that we can start turning dirt. We would be ready to start that build, that 40-week project in May, but for the lack of financial resource at this moment. I'm pursuing every avenue, but I think it's very important to know because missing the opportunity to start that construction project now could mean a delay in the project overall of up to a year. And again, that navigation center is a 36-bed emergency shelter with wraparound services. And we know from the pandemic, where we essentially created that project, the moteling project, and funded it, we know that that works. That had a 75% success rate for the first many years. It ultimately developed into Project Turnkey, where the success rate has dipped a little, but is still an unbelievably high success rate for people working in housing. So we know it works, and that is my report. I hope by next meeting I can tell you that I found either one or multiple parties to help us bring this project to fruition.
Mayor?
Yes.
Is it feasible that we can extend for another year?
Extend what?
If we don't get the money, is it feasible to extend the project out?
There's a variety of deadlines that we have to meet, and there's different vulnerabilities at each point. And so I think that's kind of a too big of a question to really answer, because there's so many different factors going into it at this point. But it feels, I am treating it as an urgent or an emergency situation.
Totally agree with you, it is.
What's that? Our Community Development Director has an answer to your question.
Yeah. So the grant secured from Oregon Housing Community Services for about $1.6 million is being utilized for operations and supportive programming associated with this project. However, it's dependent upon the project being constructed and open by the spring of next year. And so if we're not able to perform and get the project open by the spring of next year, we jeopardize that grant.
Thank you. I appreciate the additional clarity. I think there might be some other questions on the council. Councilor, if you don't mind staying on, Director Richards. Councilor Gary?
And the hope is to just get the money
Pledged.
What?
Pledged.
to get the money to meet the project and budget as is, or to VE or shop it out? Or both?
Well, I'll let you answer, Director
VE
Richards.
We have gone
V-
through a process of value engineering, Councilor Curie. One of the roles that Ben Fackler with Fackler Construction has been serving on this project is helping us go through the value engineering piece of it. It's a complicated project for two reasons. One, just the type of construction that we're looking at for this type of use. We have to look at finishes and construction from a very different lens than what you normally would look at for a commercial project. And then the site itself is complicated. But we have gone through the value engineering piece of it. At this point in time, any new value engineering will be a reduction in service levels completely.
The finish part, I believe that Community Development Director Richards is talking about is because it is a trauma-informed design.
Sure.
Do you have additional questions? Councilor Peralta, I see, has a question.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Can you remind me, was one of the funding mechanisms for that legislative funding for navigation centers?
Yeah, so that was the original $1.5 million that came from former Representative Noble last year. And yes.
To finish the question, and thank you. So my assumption is that my belief is that we weren't the only navigation center that was funded with that legislative allocation. And my question is, when you checked with other office holders, did you check in with legislators to see if other jurisdictions were having that same problem in terms of needing gap funding because of the increase in construction costs, and whether there was a legislative strategy for that?
Yeah, and I'd be happy to speak to that. So yes, you're correct. There are other navigation centers that have received original funding that also now find themselves at a deficit. However, the difference between most other projects in the state that we're aware of and us is that we are shovel ready, that we're ready to sign the contract. So as I'm sure you know, House Bill 5109 or 5019, 5109, 5019, it's one of those two. I think it's 5019. House Bill 5019 has been introduced, and that would provide some monies. It's a total of $27.4 million to all the counties that were not included in the governor's executive order. That money will be administered through OHCS, and I think the thinking is that that will serve as some of that funding for navigation centers, because most communities are not as far along as we are. So for us, that funding isn't really applicable for a couple of reasons. One, if you shake out the remaining approximately, I don't know exactly how many counties were included in the executive order. I think 10. So, but about there. If you take that remaining $27.4 million that may or may not make it through the legislature, and then you put that through OHCS, if our region gets $1 million from that, we'll still be in that for competitive grant funding. And so we would be applying for it. And those expenditures are not happening this year anyways. So forsake the $1.6 million from OHCS. And I do have a meeting request in with Speaker Rayfield to discuss how that might be a long-term assistance for the city as well, with other needs or continued need with the Navigation Center.
Yeah, and I think also it's important to note, Councilor Peralta and others, that although very grateful for what McMinnville got for the Navigation Center, we were on the lowest end of the remuneration for these projects at $1.5 million. There was another city who received the same amount, and all the other cities received twice or more than that. And so we've been struggling to put a project together with those funds. We knew it would be tough, and then with what's happening in the construction industry, it's just been hard to manage.
Any additional questions while we're on this topic? Okay, thank you. Thank you for the additional time today. We're now going to move to our consent agenda, but we do have one correction to make, and I would call on our city recorder, Claudia Cisneros.
Do you want to do department head reports?
Yes, I want to do department head reports. I apologize. Wouldn't be a McMinnville City Council meeting if I didn't skip something on the agenda there. I would like to start with our library director, Jenny Berg.
Thank you. Starting March 27th, you will all see a fence go up around the library plaza, and this will be up for about 3 weeks. It's due to refresh of that plaza. The Library Foundation has put funds towards having it power washed and redone and resurfaced, and we hope that it looks as good as new when we're done with that. We're working with Paul Dramas, who is a local McMinnville High School graduate and then some, right? That's also does work in the community. So I'm really looking forward to that unveiling in mid-April.
Thank you. Interim Attorney Walt Gowell.
Mayor, it's been an interesting month by way of contract reviews, which don't normally excite many people, but there's been a lot of ARPA contracts that have been being processed through the city. Also, the city has a major rebuild of its sanitary sewer plant that's going to be going out, and we've been working on what I understand is about a 3,000-page contract. So that has been an interesting endeavor. Finally, one of the unusual things that came up was a subpoena review for the PD that we don't often get involved in, but we have been because of the court-ordered nature of the document request. So those are like kind of the highlights of some of the activities this past month. Thank you.
Thank you. To our Finance Director, Jennifer Cuellar.
Nothing to report this evening, thanks.
Thank you. Our City Recorder, Claudia Cisneros.
Yeah, so what I was going to bring up for the consent agenda is consent agenda item 5D, the minutes for the February 28th, 2023. There is a Scribner error on the top of the date. It says February 28, 2022, and that should be 2023. So if approved, I will get it fixed on the amended agenda, and that is page 19 in the packet.
Thank you very much. To our Community Development Director, Heather Richards.
Thank you. Two things to report. I just pushed send on our application for $4 million for the 3rd Street Improvement Project with our federal representatives to try and see if we can bring some federal funds to that project. We also submitted it to our federal representatives on the Senate side as well. And then I also wanted to let you know, we sent out a flyer last week to about 2,000 households. The flyer has on it a description of our natural hazards planning program, but also by state law, we have to provide some language in there that this could impact your property and your property value. And we are fielding a lot of phone calls, and I think you as City Council are fielding a lot of inquiries as well. Please feel free to send them to staff. We're here to help people work through the process, understand the impact to their property and where they can access information. The easiest place to access information, it's on our city website. If people just go to the homepage and type natural hazards into the search function, that should bring up our project page for this. And we have an interactive map on that project page where they just type in their address and it will bring up their particular parcel and the hazards associated with that parcel.
Thank you. And Parks and Recreation Director Susan Muir.
Hi, Mayor and Council. I have a couple of things to let you know about. The first is I hope you have the opportunity to stop by the Wortman Gallery at the Senior Center. We have a teen art show going on there right now. This is part of our initiative that we heard from the community they would like more of, which is intergenerational programming. And it's been a ball over there. So if you can get there before the end of April, that would be amazing to see that. The other thing is we firmed up our sponsorship program, put a little more structure to it. And so we have a platinum, gold, silver level status for anybody that wants to sponsor Parks and Rec. You can find the information on our webpage. We've really broadened it to let people know what they will get to support us at a certain level, including being acknowledged in our rec guide and having opportunities to work with the community at different events. So we're excited about that. I talk a lot about the numbers that we have in our registrations, and I wanted to let you know that soccer, that's going to kick off this Saturday, is over 900 kids participating in that. And that is the highest that we can track in numbers since our software went into effect, which was 2019. If we add anecdotal information into that, we only surpassed that number back in 1999 once. So people are ready to be back in the parks and back participating with each other in Parks and Rec events, and we're excited about that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We'll now go to our consent agenda. Does anyone wish to take anything off, have any item removed from the consent agenda? Excuse me. Nope. I would then ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda with the amendment noted by our city recorder.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilor Chenoweth and a second from Councilor Menke. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And all those opposed signify by saying nay. And the consent agenda has passed unanimously, and I will now adjourn the city council meeting at 7:38 PM. Thank you for attending.